Hey guys, what's happening? Grincherz here, back with another video. Today I'll be going over my Bird Force 1 deck with Fey Bloodwing of the Vanar faction. This is the deck I used to get to S rank this month, flying through Diamond with a pretty decent win rate. We'll go over that later. But it was a lot of fun. The deck utilizes a lot of interesting elements from the new expansion, Immortal Vanguards, and it doesn't utilize the old combo Flawless Reflection with Ghostly Seraphim. It was more about finding a way to utilize Vanar's other strengths rather than abuse old ones, and especially immediately after the nerf to Ghostly Seraphim. So here's the deck list for you. So as you can kind of see, it's fairly early game focused. It's got quite a bit of options at the early game with 2 and 3 drops, which is all about our tempo. We're also running plenty of old staple combos like the Aspect of Shimzar with Thunderhorn combo, as well as some interesting picks like Glacial Fissure, Primus Shieldmaster. So the deck has done very well against a lot of what I consider to be top meta decks, as well as punishing several very specific matchups in particular. So we'll go over the deck here. And right away we'll talk about our removal suite. So Vanar, as always, you want to be running your Chromatic Colds. It's really useful to have that ping and that dispel of a space. And even though with the nerf to Chromatic Cold's damage by 1, it is still hands down one of the best removal cards in the game thanks to its ability to bypass spell immunity, as well as dispel generals and minions no matter where they are on the board. So always got to have those. Now, Aspect of Shimzar we'll be phasing out with the new set changes in rotation next year, but that's not for a while now, and they are only commons, so we're including them because of the combination that they have with Thunderhorn. You can turn someone's minion into a battle pet with Aspect of Shimzar, and then you can place a Thunderhorn or do it in the same turn, and that battle pet will move, and as long as you position correctly, attack the Thunderhorn and thus get the value out of it. So this removal package, I think, should be included in almost every Vanar deck right now, and it is the one that we are opting for to pair along with our Chromatic Colds. Concealing Shroud. Now this is an option that I've included because of the Vath matchup in particular, as well as there's a lot of aggro decks out there utilizing Flame Bloods and stuff like that. So I thought Concealing Shroud would help us stall, as well as push some face damage in situations where we couldn't normally, and it worked out surprisingly well. Now, the cards that are most interesting are probably Glacial Fissure, Cryptographer, and Bloodbound Mentor. These are put in the deck because we're going for sort of a burn strategy, but because I've been seeing people utilize that type of strategy and go all in with like pure damage options, I'm seeing them also gas out quite early, meaning that they run out of cards quite quickly, and they don't really have much of a board threat. So if the all-in strategy fails via their opponent healed, or they got taken advantage of in their aggression and their opponent flipped the aggression on them, I decided to go for a more tempo style deck where we utilize a lot of minions on the board. And part of that is made a lot stronger by the fact that we're running cards like Healing Mystic, which not only heal us, but can also heal my minions. In most games that I played Healing Mystic, I opted to heal a minion on board in order to better sustain my board presence. So, to go with our Cryptographers and Healing Mystics, I also have Hearth Sister, which is great because we're running lots of Warbird shenanigans thanks to Bloodbound Mentor's ability to duplicate our Bloodbound spell. And that creates a lot of powerful synergy with Hearth Sister and Cryptographer. So we can get more removal options, or we can also just cast, a minion in for a hit, or just throw something to the back line. Alongside our 2 drops, we have Frigid Corona. So this gives us 9 2 mana cards that we want to have by turn 1 going first, as well as 3 drops that we can play going second. So we have tons of options for openers, which I think is very important, especially if you aim to be fairly aggressive in the matchup. So alongside our Bloodbound Mentor, you saw Freeblade, which is a Sentinel. It's the minion-based Sentinel, and it is a 3/5 if flipped when they play a minion. It switches positions with the minion that transformed it. This is very powerful in a tempo-centric deck, or any deck that focuses on utilizing the board a lot, because that 5 extra health that they have versus the couple extra health that they have versus the other Sentinels means that they get to stay on the board slightly longer, while also it could be messing up strategies like you play a Sentinel, the Freeblade, and they play out a mana tile, and they swap positions, they don't get the mana tile. So there's a lot of great utilization from Freeblade versus the other two. The other two being, we look in here, we have Drake Dowager and Moonlit Basilisk. Moonlit Basilisk is, it becomes a 5/5 if they cast a spell, but it's the most anticipated Sentinel from the Vanar faction, and I think most people are willing to do whatever they need to do to remove the Moonlit Basilisk, and they oftentimes will waste removal before it even comes off. And Freeblade is immune to cards like Tiger and stuff like that, so it's actually quite powerful in the early game. So that is the reason I went for Freeblade. You're welcome to experiment with Moonlit Basilisk if you think you can get more value out of it. Glacial Fissure. Now in a replay I'll show how to sort of get people to position into Glacial Fissure, but one of the things that I was doing with this deck almost every game is if I had it in the early game I wasn't mulliganing it, and simply positioned myself so that their general could not do anything but step into the middle. I would stand adjacent from, or across from them, across the center tile, or I would get myself into a situation where if they wanted to contest a mana tile, their general needed to move there, and it worked out quite well. Whether or not I hit more than one thing was irrelevant. It was that 8 damage pressure spike that really sets off the early game in those situations, and some people get blown out by it. So I think Glacial Fissure, especially in a deck that looks to utilize some out-of-hand damage, could utilize that in the early game and give more oomph to their pings in the late game, because it's 1/3 their health, 8 damage. That's pretty good. Next up is Blistering Scorn. Now, alongside Blistering Scorn, I want to mention that I'm running Frostburn and Luminous Charge. I used to have no Frostburn, but I found myself in very peculiar situations sometimes where I just needed that board clear, and I opted for one. But because I'm running Thunderhorn with Aspect of Shimzar, as well as Scorn plus Luminous Charge, I wanted this one of Frostburn. But Scorn, it comes out as a 4/4, and you get the opportunity to often heal it with Healing Mystic if you have it after it hits something. It's very resilient, and it's a very powerful card in this day and age, especially against Magmar, where they have Plasma Storm. So if you have a couple of things and then this on the board early, they can't quite Plasma Storm. And Lava Slasher is even weaker after hitting it because it's 4 attack now, and Lava Slasher is a 7 health minion. There's a lot of room for this minion to be on the board. It's also good against the Swarm matchup. Brome, it's good for pinging artifacts. It's just a solid minion in our strategy, and I found it to be really good when you pair it with Luminous Charge. The Primus Shieldmaster, this is probably the most unique card in the deck, even though it's a basic. Not very many people are running this card. I like this card a lot because it's Provoke and it's a 4-drop, which is something that when combined together at the turns that you can play it, actually turns into be a big thing. You can either push a lot of face damage with it, or you can get them stuck in the middle for Glacial Fissure, or you can deter them from going face to like outpace you. If you have early game damage or you have burn strategies, they could potentially outpace you, and this card tends to stave off some of that aggression and makes them waste certain answers that you might not want them to have them utilize for cards like Thunderhorn. So I was really liking this card as it doubles down as both aggressive for locking them in and defensive for protecting yourself. And that is why I was running it. Spelljammer for that hand refill, as well as for that 3/5 stat line that we talked about for Freeblade. Very resilient, kind of tough to move, and it's annoying to remove for them because they don't get a card if they don't leave it on the board. So you always will go up in card advantage every time your opponent removes a Spelljammer, or at least change the advantage to be slightly your favor. Thunderhorn, as we talked about, it's a solid 4-drop. It's a 4/5 stat line. Very resilient, but when coupled with Aspect of Shimzar, it can seal many, many, many games just by itself with that combo. So that is one of the main reasons we're running it. Alongside Luminous Charge, this card, a lot of damage can be pushed out. It's also extremely potent against Magmar. Magmar has horrible ways to deal with Luminous Charge. They almost always will take at least the 2 damage, the bare minimum, to get out of it with their general. And I've seen worst case scenario where they have to Plasma Storm them and eat 8 to 10 damage, depending on how you positioned it. So, Luminous Charge, really strong, really creates a lot of tension in some matchups, and if you couple it with Blistering Scorn, can be GG. And like we mentioned, that 1 of Frostburn, because sometimes you just need that full board clear versus the minimal board clear, especially when your opponent plays around Thunderhorn. That Frostburn I found to be just right if I needed it, and if I found it early on, I would definitely keep it in certain matchups, like the Lilith matchup or the Vitruvian matchup where they're playing golems and stuff like that. Can be very powerful, but most of the time the game was ending at a state where 2 Frostburns would have probably just not been necessary, and I was having good enough removal without it that it seemed appropriate as a one-off in this scenario. So that's the deck. Go over the win rate a little bit. So it went 9-1, 7-3. So what is that? 16 and 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 21-4 is what I went with it in Diamond to get to S rank, and it did quite well. I was really, really happy with how it did. I got a couple replays for you. We'll do the more difficult game second, but we'll go with the game that I had in mind first. Now, these are both Abyssian matchups because they best exemplified the 2 different types of games that you can have, as well as some of the difficulties you can have in very rare scenarios. So, this is a Kassavat matchup. We'll go at real time in 1.5. I'll just zip over here. Alright, so Mulligan, we're looking for 2 drops, and we're going to replace the cards that in that scenario were the least likely to come down. That was a Primus Shieldmaster and a Frostburn. We replaced them both, looking for a 2-drop, looking for that turn 1 play. The Primus Shieldmaster is less important than the Thunderhorn, because with Thunderhorn and Aspect of Shimzar, as I've talked about, can wipe the board completely. So we want to be finding that combo as soon as we can, particularly in games where we think we're going to fall behind if we skip turn 1. So we replaced that yet again. Unfortunately, we didn't find a 2-drop, but we do get Frigid Corona, which is fairly powerful in this scenario because we want to create a sort of advantage, and if they can't contest the mana tiles early, that means that we can get more benefits from them. Now, this kind of unique scenario, he plays Blazehound, which kind of hints to me that it could be more of an aggressive list, but I wasn't prepared for what happens next. So, right away, it almost feels like we need to replace something. In my eyes, I'm going to play the 3-drop here, which is the Freeblade Sentinel, and then step down because I will get guaranteed access to both of these mana tiles, unless he removes this Freeblade, of course. But I don't want to go forward and just get myself smacked around by that Blazehound. That sounds like a bad idea. Alright, so no replace. There would have been some argument for a Primus Shieldmaster replace to look for that Thunderhorn combo, since we'd be on 6 mana next turn with both mana tiles. But in this situation, I think it is also fair to not replace the Primus Shieldmaster. Alright, so they go forward, they step on the mana tile, take that aggressive positioning, and they hit me with a Dark Seed and a Sphere of Darkness, which is 7 damage right there. Or 6 damage plus 1. And that tells me that we need to get ourselves into a winning board state where they cannot hit our general, right? Because now we don't want her to just be able to smack us around with Kassava's attack power, because they run cards like Desolator, Void Pulse. These cards can retain health and give them excuses to punch your face, because I'm not going to be healing very much. Cards like Concealing Shroud are going to be important. I need to recognize the disadvantageous board state and health state and capitalize on what we can do in this situation. So, unfortunately, this means we're going to skip out on Freeblade in order to put ourselves in a winning board state position, and probably go with the Bloodbound Mentor on the mana tile, and then take the other mana tile and the Healing Mystic so we can Warbird and get an extra Warbird off the Bloodbound Mentor. Now, we do know that they are playing Dark Seed, and this will keep our hand reasonably full, but it is probably the most advantageous board state we could possibly ask for in this situation, and I would definitely not want to go with something like this onto the mana tile, Blistering Scorn on this mana tile, punch that, and then Healing Mystic myself, because in that situation I'm taking 4 more damage plus 1 from the Scorn and only healing 2 back, which means that we're not actually denying them that ability to pressure us like I was talking about. And we're not going to be denying them any sort of positioning in this. So you can tell I was thinking about hitting him, but I think that this is the most productive board state right here, where we deny them the hit on our face, we get that Warbird proc, and we also threaten them with both minions. Now, I see that I drew a Glacial Fissure. This means that if I can, at all in this early game, get them to come back across to the middle, I would probably be in a good shape to do that. But there's no way to tell what they're going to do right now, because if they have, they could have ways to remove the Bloodbound Mentor as well as the Healing Mystic with this ping right now. It could end up being a situation where they get to pressure us either way. They could whip this and punch us or something. But I think they should handle this Bloodbound Mentor if they can this turn. Alright, so they Sphere of Darkness underneath our general. Play a Phantasm. Equip a Spectral Blade and remove the Healing Mystic. That's interesting to me because the Bloodbound Mentor represents a lot of value with the Warbird, especially out of position. So unless they have a punish or something, they're probably not going to deal with it. So right away, I see that their 2 forward movement ends their turn on the middle tile. So one of the ways I'm going to get it back into this game, especially in the health situation, no longer resides in that Thunderhorn process because they're not developing board, and it's going to be unlikely that we're going to draw into the aspect of Shimzar soon. So we're going to replace it, and we find a Cryptographer. So in order to lure them onto our side, we're going to take the Bloodbound Mentor, step him back, step all the way back over here, and go ahead and Cryptographer with Warbird. And we get 3 pings off here, which removes not only Spectral Blade, but 6 health off of our health total. Gives us the advantage. And since we know that our win condition relies on pinging the opponent with a lot of damage across the board, they have to come to us. You know, unless they start Desolator spamming, it's very unlikely that they'll be able to keep up with our Warbird pressure. And it's still early in the game, so that means that they'd have to Desolator, ping it, we get to keep our stuff, and then they'd have to play it again next turn, and they just can't do that. They'll get outpaced by our Warbird spam. So we've created this bait, sort of, to step across the middle and have her come and be vulnerable. Because she needs to press the attack against us in order to stay up. I think they feel rushed after eating all that Warbird damage, because they play perfectly into Glacial Fissure here. Not only that, but you know, they play into Warbird. So I would not have placed the Spelljammer there personally, but here's that Void Pulse we were talking about. Heals nicely for 3. And this ping is also kind of questionable. I think it would have been better off on the Bloodbound Mentor to set up Punish. We're going to replace our other Blistering Scorn, our other 4-drop, the Blistering Scorn, because we're going to be playing lots of cards in conjunction with one another. We're going to want this combo. So right away, I know I'm playing Concealing Shroud because I'm going to hit. I'm going to play Glacial Fissure, which is going to remove everything there. Remove the Spelljammer, take 8 health off of her. Step forward, and Cryptographer. We're also going to move the Bloodbound Mentor in, and BBS. There was actually some argument to not BBS there, and I sort of debated on it for half a second. If I did not BBS, then I could potentially play a second Bloodbound Mentor and get more value out of it next turn, and it's a safe play either way to do that. However, because I did not have this Frostburn, I drew this, right? I didn't know that I would have this AoE for next turn. I figured that he would have another Spectral Blade for the Bloodbound Mentor, potentially a Spectral Blade, Void Pulse, Desolator at the worst, right? That would be the worst case scenario. And I wanted to get the value out of the Warbird right then and there, in case I didn't have space to play this Bloodbound Mentor next turn, because it does eat quite a bit of mana in order to just do that soft ping. And if he was too high of health, it might not have been worth it. So notice we're also holding onto this Healing Mystic. We replaced our 4-drops instead because we want to be able to maintain our health in this matchup. But there's the Desolator. Now, this Frostburn was a pretty good top deck because of the pressure that we're going to be able to put on. You'll notice that the Phantasm is also something I didn't even talk about the Phantasm because I don't care about it. Phantasm's buff of 1 attack is not something we really care about. Revenant's an 8-mana minion now. We've given it, I think, 1 proc with the Cryptographer, if I'm not mistaken. That's no big deal. So, easy board wipe with the Frostburn. And we're such a high health right now that it's very easy to just put on the pressure, even with those Dark Seeds that we knew that she was running. And with our weak early game, we've come back to and created such an HP deficit for her thanks to our positioning and in part to her misplay that there's just barely any room for escape now. They would need a very strong hand of several Void Pulses and Desolators and all that to come back right now, because if she doesn't remove the Bloodbound Mentor, we have room to ping 6 times next turn, or sorry, 3 times for 6 damage next turn with double Bloodbound Mentor and Warbird. So we'll just kind of speed this up because she only heals for 2, which means GG. So, thanks to some of the fundamentals that I discussed early on in making sure that we had a board presence and then created distance to create the illusion that she had to come to us, we were able to pull out the victory there. The next game that will probably go at a much faster rate, it's a little longer, was a game where we should have lost. It was actually one of the, that was, all right. The next game that we're going to talk about is a game that I think we should have lost. So it's Maeve. Maeve is actually a very good matchup for us, I would think. Maeve is someone who damages herself, which is helpful when you're trying to burn someone out, right? I don't think we need both Concealing Shrouds. Scorn is fairly useful. And I talked about how we keep Glacial Fissure in the early game because I think I can create space for it to have effect. But I don't think I'll keep 2 of them. I think we'll replace 1. We have Luminous Charge with Scorn, I probably won't keep both of them, but that's oftentimes a keep if you have both of them in conjunction with one another. We drew with a Bloodbound Mentor after we played Cryptographer. That's perfect because that's exactly what we want with our Warbird right away. They go up, they play defensively with Lurking Fear. And you're thinking, oh, Grinch, why are you showing this replay? Lurking Fear, come on, man. You'll see, you'll see. That was pretty straightforward. I don't think she can contest both mana tiles, but I also want to play her on Spectral Blade, which is a very common artifact in Abyssian these days, and give her no room to just punch the Bloodbound Mentor. So we get one proc off of our Warbird, get the extra Warbird in hand. So if she wants to use both mana tiles, she'll have to play something on this mana tile and this mana tile, which means that she's standing above it, which gives us Warbird pressure. She plays another Lurking Fear, which you know, as a viewer, you're saying, oh man, wow, this looks pretty free. She just skipped 2 turns. That's actually quite scary, given that how much mana reduction that's going to be on her next couple of turns. Leaves room for 2 mana Nikomata. Which is kind of scary because that's 2 Dying Wish minions that she just reduced the mana cost for. But I'm not afraid of it. One mistake I think I do here. From the middle, I decided to step forward. Now, anytime that you are blocking your opponent in onto their side of the board, you almost always are then creating situations and developing turns that follow up on that, where Glacial Fissure will be less impactful, right? Because they cannot step through me to the middle, and it's unlikely that they'll go up and put minions in there. So I think if I wanted to pressure her with my general, I could have easily gone up to the corner here and then played Luminous Charge around her, because this creates a potential situation where she might remove the one immediately in front of her and then step to the middle. But it doesn't really matter. It's just more important that I recognize and that I point out to you guys that in this situation, the ideal scenario for us would be for her to step into the middle on the follow-up, whereas all I really did here was create a way for me to lose pressure, right? There's a gap between this minion and her. It means that she could play something to block. There's plenty of, you know, room for her to go down and right if she removes one of these things. But like I said, this Nasher, by not blocking the passage in between myself and the Bloodbound Mentor, I've now created this problem where these are out of position, my minion died, and there's almost 0 value from a Glacial Fissure right now. It's a 3 mana kill a 4/4. She follows it up with an Un-7. Pretty scary. You don't know what's going to come out of that, right? So in this situation, I could Scorn, pop the Un-7, and have fun, right? But you really got to think, how are we going to get back into this game? I just lost control of the reins, right? This is 6 damage on board, which means that's 6 to my health if I'm not careful. The only way I can think of right now to really get myself back in is to hope for a Thunderhorn combo. Which doesn't happen. the Healing Mystic is, it's kind of debatable what you replace. The Scorn has potential to combo with these Luminous Charges. She could still play into Glacial Fissure. But now that I've gone for the Primus Shieldmaster Warbird. I'm going to hit, because I think it's a race now. I think we're racing because we cannot remove her board. There's no removal in our hand. The only thing I can really do here is to put pressure on her, is to put this minion out of immediate kill range, which is to say that this minion cannot be killed by her general and the Un-7, therefore it is maintaining its pressure. But she has a Demonic Lure. She puts it down into the position that's going to be away from where she's running to, which I think is smart. If she puts it on this corner or this corner, it's still very close to her within 1 or 2 turns. So this is correct, I believe. And she follows it up with a 2-mana Desolator. Note that Desolator gets the reduction from Dying Wish the first time, but once it goes back to her hand, it will be 4 mana. And plays a Healing Mystic as well, basically nullifying any damage I just did. And now you see how further behind I really am. It's quite scary. Do you Chromatic Cold the Desolator and then Glacial Fissure? It's all kind of a wash at this point. I believe that I do. I don't know what could still be in her hand for the Un-7, but I do know that I don't want this Desolator to be spammed over and over again, because I just lose the game in value at that point. So, in my eyes, this play removes all of the immediate threats that I know of, and I remove the threat of Desolator coming down again, and then creating that health vacuum and giving her room to Malice, and me being unable to stop it. I have the Aspect Thunderhorn. At this point, but we still don't know what's in the box, right? We still don't know what's going to come out of Un-7. But they do. 'Tis very scary. They play another Desolator. This was a 2-mana Desolator, which means it was the one from her deck. It still got reduced from by Lurking Fear. And then uses Malice on the Un-7 to create a Husk up here. And pops out 2 Vorpal Reavers. That is insane. Insane. Now, obviously our best play comes down to the Thunderhorn Aspect to Shimzar combo, but where do you do it? The most likely... The most useful play to us would be to use Aspect to Shimzar on the Desolator, and then put the Thunderhorn here, because that would put the Battle Pet at this position, because this is the closest target. It would then hit the Thunderhorn. The Thunderhorn does 4 damage to whatever the Battle Pet is, 4 damage to Vorpal Reaver, 4 damage to the Vorpal Reaver, 4 damage to the Husk. Now there are risks, obviously. We could get a bad Battle Pet. We could get Oni, but in this situation I remove the ability for double Vorpal Reaver to hit my face. We protect ourselves with the Provoke minion. The problem, of course, is that what is that one card that they have left in their hand? There is no way to get the Aspect of Shimzar value out of the Vorpal Reavers and still remove the threat of a Desolator coming down every turn, which, in all honesty, is more important than the Vorpal Reavers. I think in these types of situations, you have to frequently forego the luxury of playing around things like Demonic Lure and other forms of removal, and simply do what wins you the game. And the only way I see myself winning the game is through Warbird shenanigans, and more lucky Thunderhorn pulls. So this is Ray. Ray has a Dying Wish, dispel the nearest enemy minion. However, that doesn't go off until after it dies, which means that Thunderhorn will still work against it, as you'll see. It hits the Thunderhorn. Thunderhorn procs, deals damage to everything. And in this situation, Ray actually dispelled my Luminous Charge Wall rather than the Thunderhorn. Because they are 50-50, they are both within 2 tiles. They're 2 tiles of the grid versus one another. So it could have dispelled Thunderhorn, or it could have dispelled the wall. In this instance, it dispelled the wall, which is actually slightly unfortunate for me because that wall represented more space blocking. It represented the 2 damage to the Vorpal Reavers. But it does mean that he can't cleanly kill the Thunderhorn right this turn with the Vorpal Reavers. So we'll see what happens. The problem is if he doesn't deal with the Thunderhorns and these Vorpal Reavers both die this turn, he gets tons of Wraithlings that could potentially play into the Thunderhorn. So he kills one off, and look at these guys, all connected like that. He actually has 6 damage here. He could kill me if it was a Revenant, Tiger, Desolator. So that wall was unfortunate, right? That wall would have protected us against this Vorpal Reaver. So that's why the Provoke minion was there. And the wall was above it. But Ray unfortunately interfered. So many Wraithlings. But these are all connected with Thunderhorn. Thunderhorn. Whatever they wanted to play, they didn't play it. I don't know what it was, but now we just have to do our best to stay alive. Blistering Scorn could be played, but Thunderhorn answers everything, and I want to get my Healing Mystic to heal myself up. Actually replace the Scorn, because I know that with Thunderhorn I can remove every Wraithling on this board right now except for these 2, which is extremely powerful if he has something like Shadow Dancer, because that denies a lot of trading. So I don't need the Scorn actually. I Hearth Sister this Wraithling in to connect these 2. Step up with Thunderhorn. Do a lot of damage. And we also have, conveniently, 5 mana minion plays with the Warbird. So we put these both in the center, threatening Maeve on either side, and Warbirding to get ourselves an extra Warbird. And we'll run. So we're dead to a Revenant. Thankfully, so many people have stopped actually playing Revenant, it's hard to say who is running it and who isn't, but could have it. We're also dead to 1 Desolator, which he plays Desolator, BBS it, Desolator again. But unfortunately, it is Maeve. And even though that Nasher play is sick, we got ourselves a victory thanks to the Bloodbound Mentor play we had last turn. Double Warbird to close it out. So you can see how close that game really was. at the end of the day. Thanks to both my mistakes and their lack of closing cards, I guess you would call it. But utilizing our strategy to its most effectiveness, I think, was key, and I'm glad that we got to show that off. So anyways, guys, that's the deck tech for you. I hope you guys enjoyed Bird Force 1 as much as I did, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Leave any questions, comments, concerns below, and as always, have a great day.